to dig in the soil, to combat all this sitting around thinking about how terrible things are, you know, because depression involves a lot of people thinking in negative, so they have to get out and think positive.
Well, ma'am, I agree with you, but there's also a kind of a wild card in that. If you're not just being negative, but fighting corruption.
Oh, and that's different. That engages you. You need to be engaged in something worthwhile and meaningful. Like you're engaged in this fighting corruption, and SSRI stories is engaged in fighting for people who might possibly kill somebody or kill themselves on these drugs. That helps too.
That gives you a lot of energy, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does.
It's a very deep fount of energy. Go ahead.
So anyway, we were going back again to the index of SSRI stories, and then there were 17 cases as you're scrolling down past all the school shootings. Then you come to about 58 journal articles that will tell you some of the odd things about Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Celexa, Luvox, and so on, these SSRIs that you don't really know about. And so there's about 58 journal articles. And then as you scroll further, there's 55 highly publicized cases of people who were on these antidepressants and did something very strange. For instance, O.J. Simpson, was on a double dose of Prozac during the time of the murder. Did you know that?
Yes.
Oh, you did know that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That comedian Phil Hartman's wife, who was shot by his wife, she was on Zoloft.
No, they always are.
Oh, yeah. There's so many of them that it's just, really unbelievable.
I don't think I've ever seen a high-profile mass shooting or one of these where they're not on it.
Well, yes.
Very rare. I can't remember one where it wasn't.
Well, that's why I put the school shootings up at the top of the page, because they are something new. We really didn't have these school shootings until Prozac was introduced in 1988. The very first school shooting involved an antidepressant, Lori Dan, in Chicago, Illinois. She went into a third-grade classroom and shot 7 students. 1 died and 6 were seriously injured. And she was on the antidepressant Anafranil, which is similar to an SSRI, even though it's a tricyclic antidepressant. It's much more powerful, and it was the first antidepressant to be granted approval for obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which a lot of these antidepressants are now the SSRIs. And she committed that first school shooting in 1989. And, of course, she did have some problems, too. But here's the thing. If you're having some problems, why exacerbate it by giving you a drug that causes mania and psychosis and hallucinations?
No, you're right. This just adds fuel. For anybody out there who... Here's the next big issue I want to bring up to you. As I'm sure you know, they're now in all the women's magazines, because I read them in my wife's magazines, going, you're not supposed to have a period. That's abnormal. A woman's cycle's not right. You need to go on this SSRI for that. Every time anybody I know in my family or neighbors who has a car wreck and breaks a leg, they come in and push a flu shot and putting them on some Prozac drugs for their, quote, depression.
Right.
They're pushing it on stubbed toes now, and they also mail Prozac free out in samples in the mail. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah.
These are nothing but LSD pushers.
Right. There was a terrible case in Dallas of a award-winning school teacher, Lisa Marie Smith, who was on Celexa for PMS, and she set her house on fire and murdered her 2 sons. She's in prison now. She tried to kill herself, too. But, this is an example. There she was, an award-winning school teacher, loved children, loved teaching, loved working with them. There's so many of these cases. There's so many in Texas that it's unbelievable.
But every time I hear about a woman chopping toddlers' arms off or driving them into the water, they're on it. In every, that woman that drowned her kids in Houston, she was on it.
Yeah, Andrea Yates, she was on Effexor, yes. She was on 2 antidepressants, Effexor and Remeron, and she became psychotic on them, yes. It was terrible. Really, just... See, the thing about Effexor, too, is in the physician's desk reference noun, it says that one of the adverse reactions to Effexor is homicidal ideation. So where do you think Andrea Yates received these ideas?
No, it makes you homicidal.
Because it makes you homicidal, yes. Ideation means homicidal ideas. But, you can't have ideas. Sometimes you act on them,
Listen, look, I've read the police reports. they'll pull up at a house and a guy's cutting his fingers off and he's on the stuff. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it is bad.
Stay there. Got a break. All right, final segment with our guest. We'll have to have her back up in the near future. Be sure to visit the website, ssristories.com. And don't think that she has all of it. And there's so many happening continually. Be sure and email those to her so she knows. They're trying to force medicate more and more people. Federal courts have ruled that they can forcibly drug somebody to get them ready for trial. In the famous case of Dr. Sell up in Missouri, this really is a revolution by a political guild of witch doctors, international big pharma, and their priests, their enforcers, their psychiatrists and psychologists to force everybody onto this. But I do see that they've overreached and people are really starting to find out about what they're doing.
Yes, they certainly have. And even the FDA finally did a little something on March 22nd in 2004. They put a warning on the antidepressants. It's up on their website. You can go to our cover page and scroll down to the bottom of the cover page of SSRI Stories and click on the links. And at the top link is the FDA's safety warning. And what it says there is not only that you can have worsening depression and suicidality on these drugs, but let me read this here. It says that anxiety, agitation, panic attacks, insomnia, irritability, hostility, impulsivity, severe restlessness, hypomania, and mania have been reported in adult and pediatric patients being treated with antidepressants for major depressive disorder as well as for other indications, both psychiatric and, get this, non-psychiatric. And then it says, anytime a decision is made to discontinue treatment, these medications should be tapered rather than stopped abruptly. So even the FDA did warn about the discontinuation syndrome and withdrawal. And then it says here that antidepressants have the potential for inducing manic episodes in patients with bipolar disorder. So, I mean, do we know, is this a true bipolar disorder? Or is this just a phony thing where they're saying, well, we gave them the drug and they acted up and down and goofy and shot somebody, so they must have had bipolar disorder. We didn't know
it's a perfect business model. You force people to take a drug that makes them crazy, and then you get to manage them and give them more citations, more names, more diagnoses, till you run their lives. I mean, this is a criminal guild.
They start out kind of stressed. They take an antidepressant. They end up saying the doctor says you're bipolar or whatever, and the psychiatrist says that, and then they give you antipsychotics and mood stabilizers and benzodiazepines and more antidepressants, and pretty soon you're on 4, 5, 6 drugs for the rest of your life. This is what you've been diagnosed as mentally ill. So
Ma'am, that's absolutely amazing. We've got a break again for 1 minute. Stay there. I'm going to do 5 more minutes with you if that's okay. And then we're going to have Wayne Madsen on, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to put her on hold and come back to her because, boy, I've got to have that lady on for 2-3 hours and take your phone calls with your horror stories, because this is so criminal and so obviously ridiculous that if we just speak out against it, it's going to fail. If not, they're going to try to put everybody on these drugs. Betty Henderson, SSRIstories.com. That's why this radio show is so important. We bring you all these activists, all these researchers. I want to just add, in closing with our guest, before Wayne Madsen comes up, that I have had countless neurologists, brain surgeons, psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors on, going back over a decade, breaking all this down. And we forced it now onto the drug labels. We forced it into the media, and now it's common knowledge. But 10 years ago, I'd get laughed at. Oh, yeah, Prozac made the people do the shooting. Sure they did. So let's continue. Because under the New Freedom Initiative, you never really commented on that. You are aware of the New Freedom Initiative where they want to put half the kids on drugs?
Well, yes, I am aware, too, and of the Mothers Act where they want to put mothers who are pregnant and having children and so forth, they want to diagnose them and see if they have depression and so forth. Are you aware of the Mothers Act?
Oh, absolutely. When a woman goes in to have the child, they're already doing it here in Austin. They have a computer on the wall, and it's hooked into the health department. And they ask, do you have money? Is your husband nice to you? Do you have trouble paying your bills? And then they can say your kid's at risk. The mother wonders why the CPS is there trying to take the kid. But also they then, yes, try to say having a baby is mental illness. It's not natural. Of course not. And that we're going to put you on these drugs. Yeah, tell folks about that.
Well, on SSRI Stories Index, there's 46 cases of postpartum depression where the mother killed herself and usually the baby because she was taking an SSRI.